I've got a story to share. Be me. Live in a very small town. People who live in small towns, y'all know the feeling. 99.99% of the time, nothing ever happens in our town. But when something happens 0.01% of the time, it shakes everybody up to the core. Anyways, there is this sealed factory just outside our town. Nobody knows why it was shut down and sealed off. I've checked the news, but found absolutely nothing. Summertime, have a few cousins of mine come over to spend time with me. One of my cousins asked me about that factory. Tell him that it is sealed off. He starts asking all sorts of stupid questions, and I try to answer my best. Somewhere in the middle of all that, we came to the conclusion that something horrible happened inside that factory. That is why it's sealed off. Another cousin says we should go and investigate. Brilliant idea, mate. MP3. I'm not really a big fan of messing around with things I shouldn't, but since my cousins came from a long way, I figured it's the least I could do. So we go to the factory and see that there is this big padlock on the front gate of the factory. No way we were going to break it or lockpick it. Circle around the compound hoping we would find another way in. During that process, I spot a camera peeking out from the inside of the compound. Automatically assume that cameras don't work because the factory is sealed shut. Duh. Wrong. Wav. My cousin finds a way inside from the backside of the factory. We all go inside the compound, make our way up to the front of the factory so that we can enter inside. The entry door was locked from the inside. Make another circle trip around the factory to find an entrance. Find a door, but it was locked. It had a window beside it, and figured we could break it to enter inside. Bad idea. JPG. We all entered the factory and saw that there were a lot of things left inside. Things like furniture, machines, computers, files, etc. It looked like they vacated the factory in a hurry and never bothered to come back to collect their stuff. We slowly made our way up to the third floor. There was a buzzing sound coming from one of the rooms on the third floor. That room was the server room. The servers were still on. So was the computer on the desk. We turn on the monitor. Live recording of cameras of the factory. Oh shit. PNG. Wreck the server and run like hell. A few months go by. A guy comes into my town and starts asking about the break-in at the factory. I ran into him at the local supermarket. He asks me if I know anything about the break-in. Say no. Guy gives me a creepy smile and walks away. He knows. MP3. Another few months goes by. I received a post. It was photos of me and my cousins breaking into the factory. Also, there was a letter. It said, I know.
After I finished my master's, I secured a job with a big questionable company, which has offices even in remote locations. Now, the company policy dictates that newbies should work in remote locations for 2 years, and depending on the performance, they can come work at the headquarters in the city. Since I was a newbie, they threw me in a small town in the middle of nowhere. The nearest town was 2 hours away, so it really sucked. The first 3 months in the office were all right. It was me and 4 other dumb employees. All of us were newbies. One fine day, we had a local guy come into the office. I was chatting with him, and suddenly we heard a loud shriek coming from the mountains located at the back of the town. I freaked out because WTF. The guy started to mumble saying, "Oh no, it has begun," and just ran away midway. It freaked me out even more at that point. Next day, I ran into him at the local supermarket and I asked him WTF happened to him the day before. He kind of tried to avoid me by giving vague answers, but since I was the new guy in the town, he caved in and told me that there is something out there which is responsible for disappearances in the town. Whenever that thing shrieks, happens once every 3 months. Somebody in the town disappears. 4 people a year. At first I thought it was a load of bull, but the look on his face said otherwise. But still, I asked him to prove the disappearance. He said that it won't come in the news or newspapers because people in the town were ordered to keep their mouths shut by the town police chief. Again, I thought, what a bunch of baloney. Next day, the chief comes into my office and makes us all sit down for a talk. He then asks us if we heard the shriek yesterday. We all nodded our heads saying yes. He then asked us if we knew what it was. We all say no. He then points his finger at me and says that I must know something because he saw me talking to a guy in the supermarket. I was creeped out. I knew lying won't be a good idea given he was spying on me. So I told him what transpired me to talk to that guy. He cools off and tells us all that whenever we hear that shriek, we must run and hide ourselves down in the bunker. What bunker you say? .mp3. Apparently every building in the town has an underground bunker. He walks us down to the bunker and shows us what is what. Nobody in the town would tell me what was actually happening. 3 months later, shriek.wave. Run down to the bunker and hide till the next day. Next day I heard that somebody had disappeared. Town meeting was called. We all meet in the community center. Everybody talks about people disappearing once every 3 months, and something is taking them, but nobody knows what it is. They were angry and wanted to know what it was. They wanted to put an end to it for once and all, but nobody was willing to take the initiative. 3 months later, the chief goes missing. Another 3 months later, a big ranch owner goes missing. I was so done with the town that I almost moved out, but decided against it because getting another job and adjusting was a pain in the ass. I wrote an email to my bosses asking to be transferred out somewhere else. They asked me why. I told them that I was facing harassment from the locals. Not true, but anything to get the hell out. Immediately approved my move to the headquarters. Thank God. .mp3. First day in the headquarters, my boss tells me I'm the only one who successfully graduated from working in that small town and actually ended up in the headquarters. What the hell? Ask him what he meant. He told me that all the newbies who were sent to that town suddenly stopped working midway, and there was a complete communication cutoff, but nobody from the company bothered to check on them. What the actual hell. X figured they either disappeared or just ran away from the town. Wanted to tell my boss what happened back there, but felt I would be laughed at. Decided to get proof and then talk to my boss. So I bribed a guy in the office to give me a list of employees who were stationed in that town. Go back to that town and meet with the chief's wife. Ask her if she knows who all disappeared so far since she's the oldest resident of that town. She told me that the chief used to maintain a copy of names of people who disappeared so far. She fetched me that list. Most of the people on that list were my colleagues. Apparently, the old chief didn't tell my colleagues about the bunker in order to save the town people from being disappeared. So every time there was a shriek, only my colleagues used to go missing and nobody else. The old chief one day decided to visit the mountains to see if he could find anything. This was shortly after a disappearance. He didn't find anything out of the ordinary. Shriek.flack. The old chief hid in his bunker but still disappeared. He was the only person who disappeared from his own bunker. The new chief was a good guy, but sad that he too disappeared during my time there.
Hi/X/. I came here to tell you my weird story. Never have I ever told its entirety to anyone. Not even my family, so here we go. Also, I'm not from an English-speaking country, so excuse my grammar. Be me a couple of years ago. Be 12 years old. Summer vacation. Live in a very small town, about a 30-minute ride to the nearest police station. Have lots of free time, so I go out with friends and we race bicycles all day. One day, instead of racing, we decided to ride around our town a bit. Already riding for 2 hours, it starts to get boring, so we decide to go home. Ride home with my older brother, only 2 months older. We ride past our local park and see some weirdo bending over something. We can't see his face. We look at him and he starts to stand up. Suddenly, he looks at us and starts slowly walking in our direction. Light brown hair, a beard of moderate size, wearing a pantsuit, about 2 meters tall and looking about 25 to 30 years old. Pic related, it's how he looked if you lose the glasses and elongate his facial hair a bit. We noped the hell out because we thought he looked very unusual. By very unusual, I mean that literally no one had a beard and wore pantsuits back then. We get home and laugh about how stupid and scared we were. Decide to play around my house. Then we hear a very loud scream. It sounded like someone was being tortured or something. It gives me goosebumps just by thinking about it. We decided to skedaddle into my home. Rest of the day is pretty calm, though I can't sleep at night. I haven't seen this man for the next 2 weeks or so and forgot about the whole incident. Then I met him again. Decided to go to my best friend's home. He lives about 5 kilometers from me, on the edge of the forest. We used to call him Boar because there were a ton of boars in this forest. Ride my bike into his house. He greets me shirtless and with a glass of juice in his hand. It was really hot in his home. Walk in and start talking with him. We start talking about the usual stuff boys would talk about when we hear something move in the forest. My friend blames it on boars, and I start laughing really hard. Even though he has broken the tension, the spoopy mood is still around. We start telling ghost stories to each other. They were shitty but scary enough to scare a kid. It's getting dark, time for me to go home. Start wondering why we were telling each other ghost stories. Ride at moderate speed because only cowards ride fast in the dark. Look behind me from time to time though. Then he appears. This guy appeared out of thin air and is now about 50 meters behind me. Walks pretty slowly but is obviously trying to reach me. Pick related, that's pretty much his walk. Ride like a madman, almost break my bike. In 5 minutes I'm at my door. Rush in. Parents ask why am I so scared. Tell them that a boar chased me. They would never believe the truth. I wash myself and go to sleep. Nothing happens that day. Seriously giving myself a seizure over that guy now. Be scared to go out at night. Literally stay outside only up to 7 p.m., then rush to my home. 2 months pass and I haven't seen him anywhere. Think it's over. Start going out more and for longer. Ride my bike all day again. Get a brilliant idea to visit my best friend. It was already past 7 p.m., but since I thought it ended, I decided to go to him anyway after a moment of thinking. Be halfway through the way and see a car. Looked really new and expensive, not the type of things you would see around there. Pick related, that's how it looked. It hasn't got any of the brand marks though. I was paranoid a bit, so I got scared but continued riding. Then he came out. Scared as hell, literally shat my pants. I started riding through a field track only my friend and I knew. He just ran up and took a picture of me before riding somewhere. I rode the path home and didn't tell my parents about anything. Looking back, it was a really stupid move. It was already past 7 p.m., but since I thought it ended, I decided to go to him anyway after a moment of thinking. Be halfway through the way and see a car. Looked really new and expensive, not the type of things you would see around there. Pick related, that's how it looked. It hasn't got any of the brand marks though. I was paranoid a bit, so I got scared but continued riding. Then he came out. Scared as hell, literally shat my pants. I started riding through a field track only my friend and I knew. He just ran up and took a picture of me before riding somewhere. I rode the path home and didn't tell my parents about anything. Looking back, it was a really stupid move. After that, I was never ever directly bothered by him, but kept seeing him. Never had a chance to take a photo of him though. Still paranoid about it. Can't tell anybody because they will just shrug it off as a joke. Something that I imagined.
Gonna share a story of a weird village I used to live in briefly. I would like to hear more real first-hand experiences from small towns. Be me, growing up poor, mostly on the coast of southeast England. Moved to this village in a harbour and delta area. Typically regarded as a posh area, most people know it for the old village down the end of the peninsula. We live around an area full of broken terraces where the peninsula connects to the mainland. Bro, Kate and I often walk down along the peninsula, along the shoreline. Really nice mudflats at low tide and little inlets and stuff. I generally don't go to Old Village as much. Being poor, we don't like being around the posh much. But ever since we moved in, Kay has had a complete total aversion to interacting with locals there. I assume Kay has just drawn a line in the sand. Finally, with dealing with the posh, he always resented them, but he insists they're self-aware about this increased aversion but have no idea why. Just feels totally like they shouldn't or can't interact with a stiff upper lip or a BBC News reporter accent specifically in this village. After a few years of walking together and solo, I've chatted to locals a bit more in the pub, cafe and churchyard whenever I've ended up in an old village. Not worth it. People have total dead energy and dead lives. I'm quite a humble person who enjoys the simple things, but even then, there's something particularly dead about all the inhabitants of this village. Nothing going on, nothing to say, almost like they don't know how or why they are who or where they are in life. The one joy I get out of talking to posh villagers wherever I go is that they at least tend to have interesting stories and lives. But this place is just dead. Not a pun when I say dead. I'm not about to try and convince you everyone is ghosts. Mind you, all this is totally true, just weird observations that I can't explain. Anyway, we decided to take a night walk on a full moon one evening. Well, call it 0 to 60, because about another 20 minutes after a while of walking along the shoreline to the old village, it gets to 100, and you can barely see 20 feet in front of you across the open field to the left or the mudflats on the right. Walk past a man walking the opposite way along the shingle, maybe mid-50s. No reason to walk on the shore, plenty of paths on land, shoreline take you nowhere. Wide brim hat, suit, we crack some FBI joke after walking past. Looking back, the man has just stopped, watching us fade into the fog. Get to the quay by the old village about 30 minutes later. Only access up off the shore is a slippery boat launching ramp or whatever. A slightly quicker, less sketchy way up is to just climb this low wall on your left onto the village green. Do that, Kay goes first, immediately freezes, hoisting him up. There's 2 people standing there by the quay. Tell Kay it's literally just people. We can just ignore them or say hi, no problem. Just climb up, dude. Soon as I get my head over, see that these 2 people are dressed similarly to the guy on the beach. Just stock still staring out over the water, or rather into a wall of fog. Just then the church bells start bonging out. 8 bongs. We're stood between the church and the 2 hat men. The look over to the church, stare right at us and don't move a muscle, again like the guy on the beach. Kinda wanted to walk up the path they're on, snap out of it and realise there's nothing to fear. Walk past them. Good evening. Nothing.jpg. Nice chat then, mate. Kay chuckles. We keep walking. They keep staring. Start walking through the village to take the inland way home. Once you're out of the village, it's just one road through fields and an industrial estate back to our ends. Forgot to mention this village is very ancient. Is mentioned by name in the Bayeux Tapestry. In fact, one of the first settlements mentioned by name in English written history. Also, in the county of Sussex, the number 8 is linked to a billion superstitions. If I recall correctly, the Christian Saxons kept this on from when pagans who worshipped 8 gods lived in the area. Something. So yeah, weird guys creeping around in the fog as the church strikes 8. Walking through the village, there is a never-ending stream of weird behaviour. Walk past a guy who stood in his front garden, in the gap between the front wall where the gate is, but stood facing the length of the wall instead of facing out, like a lost sim or NPC. Pleasantly say hi, again nothing. Another guy we can see through a front window laying on his couch watching TV. There's literally a load of dining chairs stacked up, totally blocking the view between him and the TV. That seed oil stare. Hear a woman muttering hurriedly sounds unnerved or something, curtains twitching about in her house. Then a yelp. I remember my girlfriend at the time saying she babysat for the couple who lived there once. Similar freaky dead energy from the kids and parents. The house was almost like a dilapidated showroom house. More out of curiosity than concern, drag my sibling to the front porch and front window to see what's happening. Excuse me, are you all right? Yes. All right, have a good night. Yes. I continue up the road, kinda chuckling to myself. This all just seems silly to me at the time. Kay is visibly irritated and bugging out. Starts up about how screwed up and eerie this place is. Suddenly, another hat man strides past us, then leaves the path up into the industrial estate. At this point, I'm over making wise cracks at the locals. That was weird. Get to where the long road starts out, on the other side of the old village. We are kind of hesitant to walk up it. Realise we're being dumb, just go for it. There were no cars around all evening, which is quite typical here. As soon as we start up the long road, 3 black sedans drive past slowly, coming out of the old village. The fog is still thick, fair enough. Still creepy having them drive past slowly. Cannot see in the windows. There's one bench along this road, and we haven't stopped or walking, so we decide to stop for a moment. Kay's nerves have seemed to calm since I confidently led the way up the long road. However, the 3 cars coupled with all the dudes in wide brim hats have got me bugging now. I can't shake this feeling. I'm constantly looking around us, over the field ahead, up and down the road, into the trees behind us. The 3 more cars going both ways, literally all black sedans, much faster than the first 3. Realise the light from the headlights is not disappearing round the ends of the road. There are cars waiting at either end. Tell Kay this and he's immediately paranoid again. Decide to go through the trees behind us and walk back along the shoreline. I take one look back to the road as we do this. A guy in a wide hat and long coat just standing in the field looking at the foggy moon. Classic moment of me breaking some dead fallen wood under my step, and his gaze snaps towards us. Screw that, gun it through trees and industrial yard onto the shoreline. Never seen anything happen in that yard, in what was at the time 4 years living there, other than some logging one time when some trees were diseased. One of the warehouses has all its lights on and its door lifted. A black sedan and a JCB digger outside, and what sound like several different sources of low humming coming from within. Didn't get a glimpse inside, just want a GTFO. Get onto shoreline, usually loud with waterfowl in the spring from dusk till nearly midnight. Silence. Fog breaks as we make our way homeward. Full moon beaming down on an old village. The area is really flat, so once you're a couple miles away, any hedgerow or trees block the view. Can only see the village green, quay and church from the waterfront up our ends. Swear to God the whole village just steadily becomes more illuminated, almost like the moonlight increasing, but not just lit from above, like all the buildings we can see are in full studio lighting from all directions. Increases and decreases in the space of a minute. Soon as it's back to normal moonlight, clouds roll over the moon. We're just sitting by the waterfront watching it going WTF. Check the time, it's a few minutes past 9. Should have heard the church bells from here. 20 minutes later, we're home watching it always sunny and smoking with the back doors open. It starts raining. Like 3 hours later, same position, same thing. Realise I've been zoned out for ages just listening to the rain because of how pounding it is. The next morning, the wind is absolutely howling and still raining, almost as if something is discouraging anyone from going outside. No one, if ever spoke to in the old village after, has any idea what I mean when I bring up that night. Not in an avoidant kind of way, just in that same dead-eyed tone of, "Oh, that's weird, isn't it? No, I don't remember that." Some people don't even remember the storm. One more weird note is that the village is so hilariously prone to flooding, to the point where, other than being full of standoffish posh people, it's what the village is locally known for. And you'll always hear about it from those from the village every single time. I went to a shop near my house the day after the storm and made an off-the-cuff comment about how it must have flooded bad down in Old Village. Met only with "I don't think so" from the cashier, so I vaguely turned the comment to other shoppers whose eyes just went dead and stared through me. Pick-related classic situation. Floods so bad that the main parking area down in the Old Village becomes totally submerged. I don't know what the point or conclusion here is. Any suggestions are more than welcome. One last detail for context in the area, there's a biggish block of private woods at the end of the peninsula. The village is in the southwest corner of the peninsula, and the woods is southeast corner, maybe a couple miles away, but over farmland with few permissive paths. Tried to get there once, turned away multiple times by farmers, builders, random people. Got there once only to see super tall sturdy fences, the likes of which you never see in the countryside round here, not even for woods used for game shooting or something. Saw a sign declaring it as a sensitive nature reserve, but usually in England these sort of things are administered by a handful of nature charities. This was something I didn't recognise. Sign for CCTV cameras, plus some actual cameras over the fence. Been meaning to get a blow-up dinghy and approach it from water one day.
Is this pool area? Lots of celebs live there. It's well known celebs sell their soul to Satan, quite literally too. So they are dead inside. Life is hell, not what was promised. They have money, and that's it. Environments are affected by the electromagnetic signature of its inhabitants.
Nah, this is Sussex. Also lots of celebs here, plus supposedly King Canute's daughter, drowned in the stream and was found floating out to sea.
Our entire town is supposedly haunted. Every morning around 4 a.m. there's supposed to be some sort of ghost Viking that appears in your kitchen, no matter what house. in a very small town in southern Indiana. The ironic thing is, it is literally turning into a ghost town. Businesses leaving, homeowners moving. We don't even do anything with the empty buildings. You can go into the abandoned Walmart. The entire strip mall in that area is dead, save for the Chinese restaurant. I was actually driving with my little cousin on Halloween one night. She wanted scary stories about the town, so I took her to one of the 3 cemeteries. It was really run down. The only fencing it had was a long chain attached to a series of poles. Easily can step over it. So we got out of the car and I noticed a car had pulled to the side of the road a little ways down from where we were. We noticed it was weird and decided to get back to the car. It would edge towards us the closer it got to the car. By the time we got in, I was getting the hell out of there. The instant we pulled out, the car pulled back to the road and began following us. A chase of sorts happened for a while until I tricked it by turning halfway towards the abandoned country road, where it was herding us, and suddenly making a sharp turn towards the main road. It braked hard trying to turn around, but ultimately it blasted down the road it chose and gave up.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel, as more green texts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.
Remember to check the Odyssey and Rumble pages for separate archives of previous broadcasts.
Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast. And welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Ask a former targeted individual anything. I was the victim of electronic torture and harassment starting July 2014. The main perpetrators were an organized crime syndicate comprised mostly of small-time thugs and bikers, but went higher up to drug manufacturers and ex-military contractors and cyber criminals. The backstory, trying not to give too much personal info. I was on the streets after my dad passed away in a major metropolitan city. I got caught up in a lot of the inner circle of gangs and street thugs. I myself was going to community college studying computer science. I've worked on computers all my life. Word gets around. I'm sure that I can do a lot on a computer that people would pay money for. Like steal info, wire money, that sort of thing. I don't know why I didn't do it to get off the streets, maybe, because I wanted to make an honest living. So I woke up in my tent one day, June 22nd, or whenever the summer solstice is. Walking to get a meal, a man who introduced himself as Richard accosted me on the sidewalk. He was holding a printer in his arms, and we talked about my skills. I'm sure he was already looking for me, as I'll explain later. So he says his boss has a job for me, and I agree to go to a hotel about 5 blocks down. There, I'm introduced to a man who goes by Bam, obviously a higher up. A couple women were in the room shooting heroin. So he asks me about my skills, and before I know it, we leave for another hotel across town. There, I happen to see a few people I actually know but don't associate with. Druggies and thugs. Then I met Tank, Fat Boy, Bandit, really huge gang members in this city. Bam agrees to buy another room where me and Richard stay, and I'm supposed to audit some networks and make them cash. I had my Linux distro on a bootable SD, and Richard provided his laptop, which was very obsolete and wouldn't boot it. So here I am, unable to do anything on that busted P3. So the next morning, he does some fraud and scams at various places, and we end up at another hotel. I get another laptop that was stolen by some dude from a library. At this point, I'm questioning their true intentions with me, but stupidly, I stayed. A night later, Bam shows up and he has what look like wireless speakers, hooks them up. Richard starts playing Berserk by Eminem. About 20 or 30 seconds in, the song just doesn't sound right at all. It starts distorting and changing. At this point, I'm thinking they're trying to brainwash me, but that's absurd. Well, understandably, things get a little fuzzy from here. but I'm hearing weird frequencies, almost like white-pink noise. And at the end of it, I sort of sit on the edge of the bed, and one says, "Let's see if it worked." Then one more "wee you be" out of the speakers, and I can sense from my eye movements and thoughts that something in my psyche has changed. That night, they take all my stuff, wallet, and on the morning, as soon as in a safe public area, I leave them. Shortly after, I develop tinnitus, ringing of the ears although no hearing loss, perceived in the brain. Now, I heard a little about V2K from the old conspiracy show with Jesse Ventura, and I began perceiving things like external voices with no apparent source. Never had a history of mental illness. And about a week or so later, I stopped hearing them, and only the ringing in the head, now permanent. I'm well studied in these subjects like voice-to-skull devices and isochronic delta brainwave manipulation, but I always could use more enlightenment on it. I've always wanted to take them down, but I haven't seen any of them since. Questions, thoughts, his crazy comments. Now I heard a little about voice-to-skull from the old conspiracy show with Jesse Ventura, and I began perceiving things like external voices with no apparent source. Never had a history of mental illness. And about a week or so later, I stopped hearing them and only the ringing in the head, now permanent.
If it was auditory brainwave manipulation, why didn't it affect them?
Good question. My best guess would be either the way the speakers were directed and pointing, or that they were already manipulated. Richard, who was in front of his laptop directing these sounds, was facing the opposite direction of the speakers in a corner. Bam was to his side, watching me.
Why do you think they did it to you? Guinea pig? Do you fit a certain profile aside from CPU skills? If you had to label what they did to you, what do you think their intentions were?
I've thought about that a lot. I knew a lot about the inner circle and the shot callers. Had a lot of information the police might have wanted. Also, people spread rumors about everyone. I kept my mouth shut. So I know I couldn't have been labeled a snitch. I really don't know what exactly they wanted from me apart from making them money. I didn't have many valuables. I didn't really answer your question, sorry. If I had to put a label on what they did, I would call it electronic harassment and gang stalking. A lot more events happened than just what I put down. All of downtown one night, all I could see were Sons of Silence members biking up and down the streets, sounding like a war zone. One biker comes up while I'm on the corner listening to a street band and tells one of the members, who I'm well acquainted with and all of the band were in the game at one point or another. Biker tells him I'm flagged and he's like, "So?"
Take your meds, OP.
I'm not prescribed any. I'm all in all a healthy, upbeat guy. No need. I've had therapy. But to be as honest as one can be when it concerns their state of mind, I believe I'm in optimal mental health. Psychology minor, by the way. I've had a cup of coffee before I go to sleep tonight to answer a few more questions, and then I'll be continuing in the morning if the thread is alive. My purpose here is just to share my experiences and give some knowledge. But if need be, call bullshit on something, it doesn't affect me. I don't know why this seems crazy to you. Again, I attest all of these events to be factual. Other than my testimony, I have the accounts of witnesses from around that time, and I'm sure there's a lot of video evidence of the perpetrators. I have a good memory of all the locations where we went. I was charged with stealing that stolen laptop, although I was later acquitted because they found the real thief on camera. I do have one question. If the case were still pending or otherwise, could I subpoena the perpetrators, or at least video footage of them? This was in 2014. If these criminals literally gave me brain damage, is there any litigation I could be entitled to?
Can you provide a tone generator for reverse capture of VoIP spoofing callers? I have been harassed for approximately 7 years with the latest number out of area caller ID spoofing. I want to take action against these callers and the harassment, but there is no agency that will support the retracing. Local, state, and federal failure to provide a route to track calls. The abuse hotline will not do anything to help.
Tone generator. For just making a sound of your choosing? I've used a freeware program called Audacity. You can create tones of your choice of frequency. I've simply used it for music editing.
Tone generator for crashing the call bot or making it freak out. I hate that voice caller stating to be Google calling to help you get your website updated and in front of millions of customers. There is absolutely nothing wrong with my website, and I know this scam. The scam is to get you to listen to the call because there is subliminal audio in the background that is an effective phone surveillance hacking method. Whoever this call is originating from, TCG partners, or their agents, are not ever going to quit calling me, so I need to mess them up somehow, electronically.
I'm sorry. You'd have to ask someone else, I'm not sure. To my knowledge, I'm not aware of a tone generator messing with phone systems like that unless you're talking about whistling into a payphone and getting free long distance. I wish I knew how to help. I'm wishing you luck and perseverance to find whoever or whatever is harassing you and an end comes to it.
Schizophrenia, the thread.
I don't have schizophrenia, nor am I trying to feed anyone's illness. If you are struggling with mental illness, I urge you to talk with a trusted friend or family member about it. It helps. I'm simply giving my testimony about real events. I'm not going to lie about this. I'd have to be seriously delusional for all of this to be false, which I'm not. I'm very sane.
I am in agreement with Z. There is something of a foot here with the personal intellectual property of people with certain computer skill sets. I too have witnessed ambient voice phenomenon, and I too have been to a psychiatrist to get checked out. The shrink said I was fine and this was normal, that it was a function of electronic harassment. Everyone that is debunking this is either a CIA operative, a deep state empath, a federal agent, or the likes of some Illuminati spy. I know that there are people out there that will debunk these claims because both Snowden and Assange said there were actors online to keep the secrets out of the public eye. These deep state actors will go to any length to make you out to be a whack job.
A lot of what you're saying can be supported. I can't wholeheartedly agree with you because I have not witnessed it all. It's really interesting that a psychiatrist would tell you you're electronically harassed. Care to share more about your accounts? Please, no fake stories. I do believe you, though.
I have been electronically harassed since 2005. This stemmed from a small tech company that had a lot of ties to local law enforcement. After I went into business for myself, they claimed that I stole a lot of their customers, and that simply was not true. Their customers pursued me through numerous and relentless methods because the tech provider was not willing to complete the jobs that I initiated. The tech company would not honor the contracts that I initiated through their organization. I did work for those companies, and this got the president of that tech company upset enough to hire a private investigator and start a suit against me. I won the suit because of a technicality in the way that I required each of their customers to put into writing that they pursued me and not the other way around. Since then, I was electronically harassed. I was hacked on numerous occasions. I was tracked in various ways. I was followed to other states. I even had a law enforcement officer call me on my cell phone while I was on site working for another completely different client in a completely different state. I had every device hijacked that I ever owned, including routers, computers, consoles, cell phones, home electronics, and other devices. I went to college in 2008 and got an Associate of Arts degree for digital multimedia, and the school would not permit me to use their lab after one incident where the electronic harassment reached their servers. I was forced to bring my own device and bring my own ISP to school. I continued my research after getting my degree in electronic harassment efforts and discovered that there are numerous state actors that will harass you once you make the red light list. I found a full and complete document that existed for a short time online, now removed, that listed every method the state actors use to surveillance you in every conceivable manner. I have gotten good at identifying when and how these actors are engaging my devices, and now I have recognized the signs and symptoms.
I'm fascinated, but I have to believe, if you're hearing voices that aren't from a bone mic, you're hallucinating. Orders, sure. Secure channel. Okay, but junkie bikers don't seem like they would have the wherewithal. What you need to make it happen.
And I'm not going to disagree with any of that. However, again, this is organized crime, not just junkie bikers. I know of some Crips and gangster disciples also associating with these other gang members. Also, it's not hard to hire ex-government contractors when you have a lot of money. Devices to cause auditory hallucinations using them have existed for a while. You can buy it online quite easy. I know these were used against me. It was a hallucination simply because I perceived a physical stimuli with no apparent source. These devices are patented. and its effects have been studied ever since microwaves were discovered.
I finally tracked down the company responsible for the electronic harassment earlier this year. The company is a sponsor for landline and mobile telecommunications providers known as TCG Partners. I did everything that I knew how to do to prevent these deep state actors from contacting me, including file a lawsuit with 1500percall.com. Eventually, they ended up coming to my home and taking me to a lunch meeting under the guise that they were trying to recruit me to be a child abuse traffic investigator. These two people were from the Dallas, Texas FedEx office, and they attempted to use their cellular devices to hypnotize me, but it did not work. I knew everything ahead of time about how they conduct their investigations and how they use the Bluetooth device on their phones to get your mind position to be adapted to electronic engagement. They failed to hypnotize me, but they did succeed in hypnotizing the entire restaurant and everyone else inside the establishment. They use a method of identifying you with a tree of life type profile analysis. They can identify every trait you have with the interview and a short but latent list of questions that are designed to identify if you have what it takes to do the job they are trying to recruit you for. They use it with or without your permission to get a better than DNA visual representation of your persona. I have not seen any results from this because I combated them from the start by engaging the questions with non-answers in a best attempt to run them astray.
It's very admirable how much you peruse these perpetrators. Hopefully you can find evidence of criminal intent so justice will be done.
There is no method for justice in this particular case of harassment. I have contacted every conceivable form of law enforcement available, and every single one of them either puts me on a wild goose chase runaround or tells me that there is nothing they can do unless a crime is actually committed. There it goes with the high-frequency sound intrusion. I need an audio tone that will block these other than blasting them with words. There must be something that interferes with their electronic devices.
Oh, I also had one more thing to say, fellas. There's a Gwen ground wave emergency network tower right above my apartment building on the roof. I've seen a couple of guys go up there and service it that don't have any company logo or uniform. It looks a lot like this one, maybe fatter. I'm thinking about going up there tomorrow and taking pics of it. Maybe we'll be able to discern what kind of purpose it has. I also think my tinnitus is worse in this area compared to other locations. Go figure. Yeah, definitely spoopy.
I live in Canada and have been gang-stalked by what I perceive to be people affiliated with the Ottawa police after being, without my asking, groomed by some sketchy guy, calling himself literally a British intel agent, Secret Squirrel. I did not ask for that guy to invite me. I told him to go fuck himself because I perceive Freemasonry to be a negative organization, or essentially organized crime, and I wanted absolutely no part. This was in 2016. It was a deep state company, but I was just a contractor working on a technical help desk. I had no idea before being hired there what this company is. Accenture is a spy front full of Freemasons, it turns out. Since then, I had weird instances of strangers staring at me from different apartment units at my previous residence, and a string of events from random people, but mostly neighbors. One group of gang stalkers above me made my life hell for 9 months. And then when I managed to finally get that guy evicted, after a ton of work on my part, I got maybe 1 month of peace before a new set of 220. Something strangers once again moved in, now directly beside me, and they began once again torturing me. I won't go into the details to spare my own PTSD, frankly. Let it be known that when I moved provinces to flee this deranged harassment, criminal behavior, they goddamn followed me to the new place. New place is double the rent, and yet still these perpetrators have placed people below me. The area I live in is very francophone with very little immigrants, and what do you know? The gang stalkers at the new spot, in the condo below me now. I contacted the police here and they have been much better, thank God. But still their harassment persists via subtle and almost impossible to prove. Harassment methods. Electronic harassment.
Stalking is a pattern of repeated unwanted attention, harassment, contact, or any other behavior directed at a specific person that causes the target to feel threatened, fearful, or unsafe. This behavior can take various forms, including following someone, sending unwanted messages or gifts, monitoring their activities, or using technology to track their movements. Stalking is not limited to physical proximity. It can also occur online, where individuals may be harassed through emails, social media, or other digital communication methods. The intent behind stalking is typically to intimidate, control, or instill fear in the victim. Stalking is considered a criminal offense in many jurisdictions, and laws have been implemented to address and punish such behavior. If you or someone you know is a victim of stalking, it is important to take the situation seriously and seek help from law enforcement or support organizations dedicated to assisting stalking victims.
The worst part is the unbelieving. They think it's your fault and that you got screwed up somehow along the way in your life. Schizophrenia, schizophrenia, schizophrenia. They say so callously and clean, as if they're 100% sure that my brain is the fault of this somehow, when I never did any drugs or drinked or even smoked, and I have no past history of mental illness in my family. It wears on me almost worse than the synthetic voices I get. They don't understand. They will never understand the struggle I go through every week when the voices act up. How strong I have to be. How resilient I became to the voices of psychological warfare. I suppose that's one good thing that came out of this. Realizing I have the strength to persevere and be greater than what I suffer. And I did that all by myself. I survived 6 years of unimaginable pain, and I plan to continue to thrive in their faces. It may come all crashing someday by some random act of cruelty, or the voices might figure out a way to finally get me to do what they want with some new psychological manipulation I've never heard of before. I'm not delusional in thinking I could fight this forever, but I can damn well try my best.
They'll shout insults at you and do their little street theater non-stop. And the second I respond, or do something back to them, they'll go into victim mode. It's their sick game they're playing. They'll laugh at you non-stop and call you names. And when you finally tell them to fuck off, they call the cops, start calling you insane. Their end goal is to see you destroyed. If you're being targeted, you could find the cure for cancer, and these weirdos will still find something negative out of it. They've made up their minds the second they targeted you. You don't deserve to live in their minds.
A few years ago, I started to notice weird stuff happening. People talking about things I'd done or said whilst alone at home. While walking around town or going places, random people doing the same thing. When driving, I noticed cars following me, leaving a 5-car gap between me and them. This went on for a while, and I started to become paranoid and scared. I ended up feeling like it was the end and voluntarily sectioned myself. The people on the ward, who I'd never met before, knew things about me they couldn't possibly know. I heard them talking one night saying they were going to do something to me. I was only there for a week, but they made it really hard for me. The staff were in on it too. Things continued to happen ever since then. Street theater, people talking about stuff that they couldn't possibly know about me, stalking, and all the other gang stalking shit. I've been telling people for years about all these things. Told the police, doctors, family, and a lot of other people. Thing is, some of them are part of it, and the rest just say it is my mental health. Now, years later, I think some people are starting to believe me. Lots of things have happened to me over the last 5 years. Too much to post about and try to explain, although I have posted about a lot of it in previous threads over the last couple of years.
Lots goes on in the world that is very strange, and I noticed that lots of people seem to be in on something. They don't act like normal people. They act like they gave up on being human, and are instead living some kind of program, following some kinds of commands.
It's bullshit psychologists telling normies what to think. Either they're indoctrinated in college orgies or swept up by the mental health clinic that drugs them into a suggestible stupor. Couple that with being peer pressured into using suggestogens like magic mushrooms while they're fed children's shows like Bluey, and you have yourself a brainwashed drone who's part of the herd.
It's COINTELPRO on steroids. It's mostly used on the anti-establishment population, or anyone such as whistleblowers, Terry Davis, that threatens government institutions. It's also used on relative nobody junkies so that the water can be muddied, and those people can be associated with actual establishment threats. And they can all be lumped into one big take-your-meds schizo populace. It should actually be called something like neural monitoring and not gang stalking, as the people utilizing this technology prefer the word gang stalking because the word is much less associative with government. I have been targeted for over 2 years, and there appears to be at least 2 stages. Firstly, you will not know technology is being used on you. They will use the mind control aspect, as well as the V2K, but not talk directly to you or let you know that your thoughts are being manipulated. From reading other people's testimonials, it seems like sometimes the V2K may not be used at all. For me, it was used for the purpose of making me think my upstairs neighbor and his girlfriend were talking about me as well as spying on me. This stage lasted for months and evolved into me believing different people were spying on me, including family members. I believe this stage is the social isolation attack designed to ruin friendships and estrange you from family, as well as to discredit you by getting you to check yourself into mental institutions. After a while, you realize something is wrong. You're not crazy. Your friend isn't living in your attic with a roof access hatch, and you start doing some Google search.
Are not ever going to quit calling me, so I need to mess them up somehow, electronically.
I'm sorry. Me to the new place.
These 2 people were
After one incident,
Utilizing this technology, you no longer think your neighbor is talking or spying on you, so they will talk directly to you, and although you can talk back, gang stalkers seem to be of the tamer variety. Either that, or I wasn't bad enough to warrant the full-blown torment and terror some people report. Stage 1 caused me to lose my job, and the gang stalking for a long time after that was get a new job. One of the most memorable experiences was being woken up by them in the middle of the night, and the V2K not being annoying and AI-like, but rather them using a normal voice and asking me and telling me to think about what I genuinely wanted to do for work. Once I got a job, they used the tech to help me get used to it in the form of pain, fatigue relief. All this sounds completely batshit crazy, and I wouldn't blame you for a second for not believing it. I honestly couldn't tell you if my gang stalking was to ruin me or help me, but even after getting off drugs and getting a decent job, it didn't stop. Maybe glowies are testing on us? I don't think they are testing anything. This tech has been around for 50 or so odd years, with patents proving it. They know what the tech can do. There's probably very little to experiment with. I think something, be it satellites or advancement in AI, have led them to be able to use it on a much broader scale. I think the real question is how exactly broad is this scale? Is it the entire population? From researching this stuff, it seems like when you're first targeted, they do it silently for a year or 2 in order to build a psychological profile on you in order to make it much more effective. And then the gang stalking begins. And once it begins, they've basically gathered intel on quite literally everything you've done your entire life. It's likely that this isn't the case, and more so that the entire population is hooked up to this shit as some sort of population control mechanism. And once you red flag enough, the gang stalking begins. That's not the interesting part either. Who the hell cares about a druggie thinking his or her neighbor is spying on him? Or what he does with that falsely planted narrative? The real question is, how are they using this stuff on a global and political scale and who is using it. It's real. Whoever is using it can read your mind, influence your decision-making, and if they want to completely incapacitate you, whoever is utilizing this technology is quite literally running the show on a global scale. And what we see in the news, in politics, and reality itself is basically just theater. They can read your mind, know what you're doing, where you are. They know your entire life history and can read your email by decoding brain waves as you're reading it. All of those things you describe are what gang stalkers make you believe during stage 1. You're being followed, your electronics are bugged, there's infrared cameras in your walls, etc. I believed all of those things, but none of those things turned out to be real, and I was only led to believe those things due to the mind control aspect. I think a lot of targeted individuals only ever get to experience stage 1, and they'll believe those things as long as they live.
They are even good at making you believe they have a lot more power over you than they actually have in reality. I'm sure they can't predict everything yet. They wouldn't be getting mad at me.
They do have complete power over you. I read an LA gang member's testimony about his gang stalking, and it can be absolutely vicious. You probably aren't a violent person and aren't a threat to innocent people, so they aren't going to violently thrash you around or give you the crippling pain they are very able to induce. Their predictive powers are pretty amusing, though. No idea how it's done, but mine will occasionally use it often during when I'm watching TV. I always ask them about conspiracies like the moon landing, but they just pretend to get pissed off and never give me any straight answers. And even if they did, there wouldn't be any way to verify it.
The two key words are COINTELPRO and Zersetzung, East German Stasi. It's very real. The government hates you, probably because you know the truth and speak it fluently. We live in a totalitarian matrix where only the enlightened realize that we aren't free.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more green texts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.
Remember to check the Odyssey and Rumble pages for separate archives of previous broadcasts.
Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast. And welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Why are you being gang stalked? I personally don't believe in gang stalking, but I'd like to hear why you believe you're a targeted individual. Any reason for why they are after you? And if there's no particular reason, why would someone care to target you?
Gang stalkers are actually confidential informants. Literally anyone can become one. Get a DUI, make a deal with the cops, and now you are one. DUI arrests and drug offenders are usually the ones who are conscripted because they have a weak will and are led by a chemical to go against their own priorities, leading to them being easily manipulated and controlled. Any person on probation or parole is targeted by these people. Only a lack of awareness leads one to not see this. You can be targeted for other reasons, such as being under investigation, divorcing a cop, alternative viewpoints, being active on the dark web, or just simply cutting off a Fed in traffic. After they work off their indebtedness, some keep doing it for the money. If they are active in giving info leading to an arrest, they get paid. Your taxpayer dollars are being given to some drug addict criminal for most likely setting up the scenario and providing the evidence which lead to the arrest.
I believe I was targeted for a while. At the time, I'd pulled together some pretty compelling evidence that would prove some damning things about how our world is run. I was at an excellent place in my life. I'd built my reputation up to be a pillar of my community, so that when I did release this information, it wasn't just coming from some crazy person. I must have actually been quite a threat at the time because I had my whole life systematically dismantled. I never believed in gang stalking. I always just thought it was crazy, but then it happened to me. Now it stopped, so I can see the difference. I don't think as many people are targeted as they believe. I also don't believe targeting is permanent, but I know it's all unfortunately very real.
Care to share any of that compelling evidence?
See different ones of these every time I go out. I could post so many of these collages that I'd get banned for flooding. Every day I see too many of them. Statistically impossible. It's World War Weiner, the Stasi Zersensung surveillance operation. Marcus Wolf, former Stasi head, helped create the Department of Homeland Security.
Why do you think this has something to do with the government or any sort of human group? It could be that there is divine meaning that could be gleaned from these observations. Each number is a frequency reverberating through reality. Numerical patterns are built into our existence by God.
I have not ruled that out, as it's the main reason, in my opinion. Also, I will note that aside from blatantly glowing cars like PIC-related, the police department in my area is not in on it. In fact, the glowies are so obvious that they have gotten the attention of the police, who now also occasionally make their presence near me. But the strangest thing is I feel a safety in their presence. I can tell the cops are trying to protect me from provocateurs. Just the other day, being followed by a glowy on my way to get a cheeseburger, and a cop cut off the glowy in the parking lot since the glowy was speeding. While enjoying the burger, the cop also came into order, sat right in front of me, looked up just once, nodded his head, and then resumed his meal. There is a grand conspiracy out there, but not everyone is in on it. And there are a lot more good guys than bad guys. Never let demoralizers make you feel like you are alone. Obviously, disturbing the peace will cause cops to not be on your side anymore, but as long as you are a regular law-abiding citizen, glowies can literally do nothing but follow GPS instructions from their stupid apps that tell them to go places at certain times of the day, mainly to line up paths with targeted individuals so the travelings are parallel. Most of the times they have no idea what they are really doing. Several bums, crazies, parolees, and criminals and bad faith actors are paid off as well, and they take their job of being a surveillance operator way too seriously. God bless you, Anons. If you are reading this, just know that there are more people that you can trust than there are you cannot. It's not the Truman Show unless you all are in it against me. Get away from me. Just kidding.
Sexant is the practice of monitoring and/or characterizing and indexing the pornographic preferences of Internet users in an effort to later use the information for blackmail. The term is a portmanteau of sexual intelligence, retrieved on an intelligence service target, and was first used by Jennifer Granick, Director of Civil Liberties at the Stanford Center for Internet and Society. A leaked NSA document from October 2012 identified 6 people, all Muslims, whom the document termed radicalizers and presented as potential targets of this method. The document does not accuse any of the 6 targets of involvement in terrorist plots, but rather states that the NSA believes the targeted individuals radicalize people through the expression of controversial ideas via YouTube, Facebook, and other social media websites. That said, though, the technology is shockingly advanced. They have mind control technology and extremely advanced psychological profiling. You'd have to see it to believe it, because the people being controlled don't realize they're being controlled. It's remote, and the thought comes across as their own.
I'm not gang-stalked as per the usual meaning of the word, but I get demon-induced aggression from random passers-by. I've developed a good enough radar that I can identify them half a mile away, and they're typically pussies afraid to actually fight. This usually happens soon after I've had a good day, so I know it's this simulation just trying to mess with my emotional state. Nothing to care too much about, really.
Notice how you don't answer why this happens to you, and no, having a good day isn't a reason. It'd be better just to admit you're mentally unwell.
There is literally no reason. Maybe I may look intimidating to someone, I am not very big, but I have been working out. Most people are normal, but then you spot one that will start trouble. He is walking in the middle of the lane. Okay, I walk on my side to allow him plenty of room. I do not look at him unnecessarily. Just as he's passing, I'll glance at him, and he will then be staring at me with an aggressive expression. Keep staring, and I stare back as well until we pass each other. He says something to me by muttering, and may shout at me and try to challenge me to a fight from a distance. Happened twice in the past week or so. But yeah, I'm the one who is mentally unwell because, okay.
I do understand as well there is no gang stalking community. It's an abyss. You can tell that they only target the poor. People who are rich don't get this unless it's requested. Look into it for yourself. Type in gang stalking and filter by date on YouTube. You will find actual evidence, but the vast majority are of bad quality. You are basically tuning into a torture session if you catch a channel where they upload daily. Some have it worse than others. People come out of that with the worst mental issues. Some stay uploading for years and never stop. It's an abyss of people, both fake and real, paid and unpaid, actually being stalked and not actually being stalked, documenting their experiences. The people you call gang stalkers use people as lab rats. If you don't know, it's likely you haven't been used in a psychological experiment. I have 4 months worth of my own evidence. Day and night the same things are happening. Very obvious because it's meant to tell you. Every time I'm doing well in life, they are sent to screw it up. Back then it was harder to do, I had less to lose. They want me to have nothing to lose. Also, they do a good number on you through humiliation. They love to find out what's happened to you, what they can make happen to you. Use it to degrade you. They find out some small thing about your personal life, screw it up with it. That or just insult you. Fact is, most people aren't there to listen anyway. They're there to do what their brains find amusing. Do what thou wilt, if you could say. Then there are those who think they've got the picture pieced together and won't care to listen to the actual truth. Then it's a matter of understanding the mind. Why is this thing like this? I don't know, but here I am.